Welcome back to PedalBox, where we're fixing yet more cans that we've been kicking down the road for many, many years. And this week our targets are the power steering hydraulics, our windscreen wipers, and hopefully a few other little bits and pieces besides. Well, first up on the block today is our wiper motor and mechanism. Now this is a smart 4.2 motor and gearbox on its own original linkage, although we've modified it a little bit to swap the sides to clear our fuel tank. This is all covered in an episode many, many, many years ago. We have actually tested this. We plugged a battery into it and found that it did work correctly. I can't remember exactly what each of the pins were, but we do know that whatever they were, they did work. Now, we didn't really think too much beyond that. We figured, okay, well, like if we can put 12 volts in here, we get low speed. We put 12 volts in this one, we get high speed. If we put 12 volts in this one, we get intermittent. And we just kind of assumed, without really thinking, that that would be the case on every other set of wipers. Unfortunately, the control systems between our VW wiring that's in the car and the relay that's in there and the smart motor here is not actually quite consistent with each other. In VW cars, particularly the TT we pulled this from, or maybe only, the controls are actually split between what I assume to be some sensors, maybe some little micro switches in here, and the relay box in the car. So the smarts that you need to, like when you turn off intermittent, the wipers park themselves and things like that, or at least partly in the wiper control unit in the car. In the smart one, and again, I can't remember precisely, it's been quite a few years, but the placement of the control seems a bit different, and the effect that that has, and the reason why we're kind of stuffed at the minute, is because there are not directly equivalent pins between this motor and this one. So obviously the wiring that we have coming out of the car that we're trying to couple up, we can't just like connect the wires around in the right orientation and get things that work. What we have found is if we connect everything up to the original motor, I mean, this shouldn't really be a surprise, but everything works, whereas we cannot possibly get intermittent on this motor with the wiring we have. Now, to be fair, this might sound mildly insane, talking about like trying to cobble a different brand of gearbox onto a different brand linkage and everything, rather than just fix some wiring. But in fairness, we're actually quite lucky here. These are both Bosch motors, probably even both Bosch gearboxes, but the important thing is the 3 bolts that hold the gearbox to the frame appear to have, and we haven't measured this precisely, but appear to have the same spacing and sizing and everything. So if we're really lucky, we should be able to just unbolt the smart gearbox directly and just bolt the VW on. Now, unfortunately, because we think it's that easy, it won't be, but stick with us and we'll find out. So we gave it a quick little test run just on intermittent mode earlier, just to make sure there were no like clearance problems, anything like that. And it turns out there was in fact a clearance problem. The arm on that side was coming into contact with our fuel return. Now we weren't really happy to let that clearance itself. So where the fuel line is P-clipped to the bulkhead, we just flipped the P-clip over. So the fuel line's been moved back that way and we're now all good. We had another little problem as well with the wiring. We think that this motor probably came off an A3 rather than a TT, because the pinout on the motor doesn't perfectly match what we've got on the TT diagram. I can't remember the exact numbers. I think there's a 31B on this, and a 53E is the pin number label on the circuit diagram, and that kind of threw us for a bit. But once we took the pin on this that's labeled 31B and connected the wire that on the other end of it on the diagram says 31B, everything worked. So we now have all of the regular operating modes for our windscreen wipers. So I'm now going to pretend to be the support bracket here while Adrian goes through the modes. So this is intermittent. This is low. And this is high. And yeah, everything seems to be working pretty well. We've also put some little tape flags on the spindles here so that you can see which way they pointed. We did attach them where we thought we wanted the wipers to be at rest, just to see where they moved. And I'm a little bit worried about the angle of sweep. I don't think they're coming up far enough, which is a little worrying. But we're not really going to know for sure until we've got real wiper blades anchored onto here. But for now, at least, it seems to be vaguely reasonable. They're level at rest. They sweep at least most of the way up the windscreen. So I think we're provisionally okay. We might have to work on this a bit in future, but we'll cross that bridge when we get to it.
We thought our power steering system was basically a solved problem. We found the reservoir we needed, the banjo bolts fit, the hose all worked, and we had a nice circulating loop onto the rack. Now we need the fluid in the rack because although it's powered and we're not using it as a powered rack, that fluid lubricates the system and we don't want to run it dry. All well and good. And then one day I came out and all of the fluid had been dumped over the floor and the frame and everything else in there, which was less than convenient. And it turns out the hose at this end, where the reservoir is, had just completely torn through, and had a couple of ideas why that might be, but we shortened it down, made sure that the clamps weren't tearing into it, and put it all back together again. And the same thing happened a couple of weeks later. So maybe that hose was a bit too soft, it split too easily, whatever. We've got some different hose. Obviously this piece is far too long to go from here, the 6 inches down to here, but this will work as a test. We don't want to cut this to length until we know that this hose isn't going to self-destruct. So this system's actually been hanging at the back of the garage for about 2 months now, like this, just to see whether or not this rubber hose was going to split from the clamps being on it, or whether it was possibly reacting with the power steering fluid and we need to just get some different hose. This is also different hose from the last time as well. It's a little bit firmer, so maybe if it was a tearing problem, we've solved it. But we're going to put this on. Now it's kind of proved itself in a dry state and see how the system works. So hopefully we'll come back in a month or so, or maybe even a couple of weeks, and this will all still be together and full of fluid. That'd be really nice. A few episodes ago we were working on the lights on the back of the car and we were trying to work out what the problems were. Turns out there were many, and we went through this loom down the side of the car to try and work out where the problems were. Most of them were at the back, but we also found this errant blue wire that started around the wheel and went all the way into the engine bay. No label, nothing, and we thought, great, we can just get rid of that, and we took it out, stripped it back out of the loom, and we thought that was a nice easy win. Turns out no, that cable in the loom was actually very much required. We have some fans that sit on the intercooler in the middle of our engine bay. Now we wanted some sort of cooling in there just to try and draw air through so we could actually pull heat out of the engine bay in general. Once we added the third intercooler in to go along with the side pod ones from the original car, well, you might as well be blowing air through the intercooler anyway. And that's pretty much where the problem started, because there's no way to run those fans, there's nothing to trigger them in the back of the car. So we ran a trigger wire to a relay that comes off the battery feed to power those fans manually. And the switch lives in the panel on this side. That's where the light switch goes, and this is our little switch to do that. And that wire comes out the back of here, triggers the relay and turns those fans on. So now we have to rethread this wire all the way through and plumb that back in. And since we're tying up loose ends and cans that we've kicked firmly down the road, it seems like a pretty good one to get out of the way. So we threaded our wire all the way through to behind where this switch panel goes, up here, and we're going to do this right. We need power to go into this to send to the relay at the back of the car, and we're going to pick up from one of the fuses that we're not using, one we actually decommissioned from the aircon system, at least I think it's the aircon system, number 16. We're putting a 5 amp in instead of the 30, and we're going to take that off through a little cable, mostly because there is already a pigtail left on the output from these fuses. We took a lot of these off. We removed them and then capped them off so that there was never going to be any chance of any sort of stray current touching something. And unfortunately, we trimmed them off so close that a lot of these are actually unusable, but this one should be fine. So we're going to attach this on with one of our little connectors, the little heat shrink ones, and pop that into the back of the fuse box down here, and then we can run it up around sensibly to join up with this cable at the back, and then put the pin out into the socket, and then we can remove the switch. And while I'm doing that, Chris is going to test a few other things on the front of the car around the fuel tank with the sender, because we did make some mistakes there as well.
Quite a while ago we pulled the fuel tank out of this car, and because we're really clever, one of the things we had to do was cut it out. It turned out we had hardwired the sender, which is kind of bonded into the top of the tank there, into the wiring harness of the car. There's no way that we could decouple it to take it out, so we just cut the wires, which means that obviously for now we've got no electrical connection from the tank to our fuel gauge. So today we're fixing that. So we've got the connector on there now, that's all crimped up and good to go, but before we connect it to the car, we're going to use our test lead here that we've previously been using to power the car off our little bench supply. We're going to connect this up. Aid's going to pop a little hook down into the fuel tank and manipulate the float sensor in it, and we're going to measure the resistance that we see on the sensor so that we've got some idea what we have to kind of calibrate the rest of the car to. I'm not sure how we're going to do it, but we'll burn that bridge when we come to it. So I've got the ohm meter hooked up to our test leads here, and I'm seeing 9 ohms on the sensor at the minute, and I'm hoping when Aid manages to fish that hook down into the tank and pull the flow up, we should see that change. Don't know what way it's going to change, but wobbling around all over the place. 130 ohms. I wonder if the sliding contact might be a bit iffy in there. But yeah, it looks like it goes somewhere between 10 ohms and 100 and something.
That's peaked.
Yeah, so we're now at a steady 100 ohms. Now, last thing before the light completely disappears on us tonight, we're going to do a couple of quick tests with our fuel pump. First, we need the bench supply here to try and power it up. We're just going to put a couple of volts directly across the terminals, make sure it spins. And then if it does, we're going to test whether we see 12 volts on the terminals that will feed it later when we expect to. Now, I'm going to have to get my Go-Go Gadget arms on for this now because it's all the way down there. So if Aid reaches in from his side, the supply off? Oh yeah. Cool. So that runs, we get a nice little buzz off of there. So we'll knock that off so that we're safe. And now we'll get the voltmeter out again and see if we can find 12 volts on those ring terminals that will one day feed it. And now for our second test of the fuel pump, we've got the ring terminals that are going to feed it here. We've got Adrian on the ignition key ready to go, and we've got a voltmeter reading to see if we see 12 volts. So if you pop us round to P2, and that is a whole lot of nothing, which in fairness, not a massive surprise. The ECU's not in, and that might well be in charge of the fuel pump. So far, so fine, I guess. And now with the light failing us, there is one more test yet to do, and it's actually quite a good one to do in the dark because we've finally got our new headlight switch.
So it's out with the old light switch and in with the brand new one. All I've done is open this up to make sure it was in fact the right unit and part number. Other than that, I've done nothing. Right, let's plug that in. I've already got the key on because it's going to make lots and lots of angry noises when we turn it on because everything's missing, including the ECU, which is why this is flashing. Let's try side lights, which you probably can't see because it's being washed out by our big lamp, but Chris is giving me the thumbs up. Headlights. No. Hang on, I just turned them off again. Okay. Why? Okay, we have no headlights, which is wrong because we've got at least one working bulb in there, but I've got, are the wipers going?
Yeah.
Pop the mech's spinning around, yeah?
Yep.
Okay, so headlights turn on the wipers, trigger both indicators. Are the indicator bulbs on?
Just that side.
Okay, so one of that could be a. Okay, I have a few questions. That is not the win I was hoping for. I was expecting to plug this in and everything was going to work just like when we had this one in. Just for a laugh, I'm going to plug the old switch in and see what that does when I go to the same position. So that should be lights.
Side light.
Okay, that's headlights. Headlights doing nothing. Okay, maybe it is just a faulty switch that is breaking everything. That is not going to be easy to diagnose right now because it's 4 o'clock, it's Sunday. Chris has got to head back home. It's also cold. It's getting colder as we get further and further into the night. This is not something we're going to be able to diagnose right now, or even today. This is going to be a future problem. So I guess join us in a future video when we work out why our brand new headlight switch is doing nothing. These are allegedly exactly the same part number, although this is a pattern part. It is not a genuine OEM one, so I might have to do that. Might have to try and get another one, possibly go down to the scrapyard during the week. All of the pin numbers appear to be absolutely identical. All labelled up exactly the same. Yeah, that is not a job for right now. So, thanks very much for watching. I was expecting a very different outcome to that, if I'm entirely honest. The wiper motor coming on with the headlights is suboptimal at best. If you'd like to support us in potentially buying yet another one of these, you can go to patreon.com/PedalBox Show and support us there. If you're a patron, you can also go to shop.pedalbox.show and you can get discount on the merch, t-shirts, hats, mugs, which I don't think I'm actually wearing any of it, and my mug is somewhere else right now. So yeah, thanks once again to all of our existing patrons. As always, their support is vital. Oh, Chris has just passed me in a mug. Their support is vital ongoing throughout this process to buy some of the remaining parts that we need to get this car finished and on the road. You can join them there, buy some merch, and we will see you in the next episode when maybe we'll have a diagnosis on what is wrong with this switch. Thanks for watching.